Welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast with Dr. Andre. You are now listening to your number one source for clear, unfiltered conversations about your health and wellness. Join us every Tuesday for success stories, educational topics, and interviews with wellness experts from around the world. You can listen to this podcast on your computer, phone, or any other electronic device that streams podcasts, or download each episode and listen to it on the go. Let's get started with today's episode.
All right, so maybe you can see me this morning, maybe you can't. Either way, Happy New Year. And I think this is going to be my first episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast for 2025. It is your number one podcast for clear, unfiltered information about your health and wellness. And today's going to be a no holds barred episode. And I make no apologies for that. I am going to make some very strong statements, I suspect. The good thing is that I'm doing it while doing my morning walk, so that will balance it out. And I might take the time to show you a couple of the trees here to make it more serene. But there's something I really need to talk about. Some of you who follow me on social media might have already seen it. I need to look in the camera here. And yeah, before we do that though, I'm definitely gonna read one of the comments from one of our wonderful healthy reasoners. So check out this comment, and then I'll be right back with something that we all really need to discuss.
Healthy Reasoner Paul Panme commented via WhatsApp. Paul says, "Merry Christmas to you and Nisha, and a Happy New Year. I enjoyed your podcast introducing your loving wife on your NYC holiday. You guys are so happy, laid back and friendly. You make a great couple. Whilst watching this podcast, it reminded me of the movie Cool Runnings. You guys look like you will have a lot of fun and make great memories in New York. All the best, and looking forward to the next lot of podcasts. Paul."
Okay, so I'll remember to look into the camera. I am concerned. I'm concerned today because something that I thought was just a few coincidences turns out to be a trend and a pattern that I'm seeing more often than not. So many of you would have listened to episode 1 and you know my story. You know that I walked away from the hospital, what many would have called a promising career, and I decided to go in the direction of integrative oncology or naturopathic oncology. And I thought that was a good decision, and I still think it was. Still stand by it. But here's the challenge. I have been doing consultations with people all over the world via Zoom for maybe 6 or 7 years. It's never been something that I thought too much about. Obviously, because I'm an oncologist by formal training, it was a little easier for me to help patients across the world with cancer because they would have given me their medical reports from their formal oncologist, their conventional oncologist. And I think I'm going to walk up here. And so it wasn't a big deal for me to go through their reports with them and help them to understand what the reports were actually saying as a part of the consultation that I provided to enroll them in, say, a protocol like the Gonzalez protocol, the Gerson therapy, or whatever the case may be. So that wasn't an issue for me. From time to time, though, I would hear patients make comments like, wow, this meant so much to me. I'm so glad we were able to have this talk, and just having this talk with you about my diagnosis made it all worth it. And being the person I am, I figured, oh, this person is just being nice. They're being grateful for the help. Because of course, this is what all oncologists would be doing anyway, right? Spending the time to talk to their patients about the diagnosis, getting them familiar with the medical terms, what they mean, because that's what I recall doing. Getting people familiar with chemotherapy, if that's indicated, radiotherapy, surgery, etc. But especially over the past few weeks, I have been seeing a trend that disturbs me, where more and more clients have been saying to me that they came to see me because they wanted another opinion, or they wanted to hear more about the naturopathic protocols or approaches that I use, but they got more than they were bargaining for because I simply took the time to explain to them, for example, what a biopsy was, what the results of the biopsy meant, what staging of the cancer meant, and so on. And that to me ought to be basic. So what I'm meeting more and more then is patients who come to see me because they're scared. And understandably, being told that you have a diagnosis of cancer must be scary. And as somebody who's been on the other side of the discussion multiple times, being the one actually telling a patient that they have developed cancer, I know that as a human-to-human interaction, it's not easy. As doctors, we're trained to be objective, to stick to the facts as much as possible, and to express the information in a way that makes a calculated judgment. But I think many times we forget that to the patient, it's not easy. And it's not just the fact that it's a scary diagnosis. I was giving it some thought early this morning, and I said to myself, this feels like if I, as a doctor by training, was suddenly told that I was supposed to go to outer space tomorrow. And I had to suddenly acquire all the knowledge that would enable me to function in, whatever, the International Space Station or whatever. That would not be cool. And all of a sudden I'm being asked to make a choice about the type of spacesuit that I should wear, because there's one that will feel uncomfortable but will give you lots of oxygen. There's another one which will give you not as much oxygen, or you have to do more things to sustain your oxygen, but it's way more comfortable. There are different types of food that you can eat while in space. Some are tasty but not very nutritious. Others are nutritious but not very tasty. I mean, I have no idea what an astronaut's life is like, so I'm just making stuff up at this point. But that's how I think it must feel to the patient who has to hear, let's use the word us as oncologists, talking about the diagnosis. It's unfamiliar information, and it's really a decision being made about life, your life, what you're gonna do, what your life is gonna look like, if you're gonna be able to survive life. Morning. And so it's it's hard. And I don't understand why it's getting harder, because the level of fear that I'm seeing on these the patients' faces when they come to meet with me. I mean, I do a Zoom consultation at least twice a week, and this level of fear that I'm seeing now is more than I'd ever seen. And even for the patients who have pushed forward with so-called conventional treatment, they're still looking pretty shell-shocked when they come to see me. I know the treatment is rough, but emotionally they are just wrecked. So this bothers me. It bothers me enough for me to dedicate today's episode to it. And this has to be something that I guess I speak into for several reasons. One, I think that the problem we're facing here is twofold. Okay, granted, most people tend to not want to pursue the conventional approach right away. They like to look at options. And I think more and more oncologists in the conventional healthcare system are aware of this. The other thing I think is also happening is I think there are a lot more cancer cases. Now, I don't want to get into that, but just based on anecdotal evidence, talking to my other colleagues, there has been a lot more cancer over the past few years. And the third thing that's happening is how do I put this delicately? With all the advances in conventional cancer care, the immunotherapy drugs, the frightfully expensive targeted therapy that's now become available, all of this is really leading to increased, let's use my 4 principles. So it's leading to more destruction of cancer cells, which is great. But I don't think, based on just a panoramic view of the literature and just looking at patients' experiences in general, I don't think these advances are pushing people towards greater survival of cancer across the board. Yes, I know that they're extending life to some degree, in some cases by several months. But if we look at all of the different cases that are being treated across the world now, I don't think people, whether the patient or the doctor, is necessarily more optimistic about outcomes with a cancer diagnosis now than we were in the past. So on paper, it could very well be that we're getting better outcomes. But I don't know if the expectation within the culture is something that translates, so that when somebody has that diagnosis, they're expecting that they're gonna do well because X drug is now available. And I'm making a very broad statement there, but I think it's a fair statement. So I don't know what the conversations are looking like now when a patient is diagnosed and goes to a conventional oncologist to get their diagnosis. But here's my suspicion. My suspicion is that neither the doctor nor the patient is optimistic about the possible outcomes. And as a result, the conversation is one that is very methodical and robotic. This is what patients have reported to me anyway. So we'll see. So to quote a patient that I recently spoke to, and this was a session that I had on Zoom recently that made me sit up and take notice. The patient felt like the kitchen sink was thrown at her. And that's not good. Let's just call a spade a spade. That's not good. Because we know that for any cancer treatment protocol to be effective, you need to have 4 things. 1, you need to have, you're probably not able to see me, but that's okay. You need to have the ability to kill cancer cells. 2, you need to be able to replenish and repair the damaged tissues from the treatment and tissues damaged prior to the treatment. 3, you need to have adequate detox. And 4, you need to have good emotional and spiritual support. So that means if we traumatize the patient just by telling them what's wrong, and of course there's no easy way to tell somebody that they have a diagnosis of cancer, but there is a way to be able to let them know that support is available. And so they don't feel, as my assistant pointed out yesterday, they don't feel dehumanized. That's what I think is happening. I think patients are starting to feel dehumanized, and it's not necessarily a reflection on the doctor not doing a good job. I think it's just a reflection of there being so much cancer around the place, and that increase in cancer has not been accompanied by an increase in an expectation for better outcomes. And so naturally, as humans, we are not going to feel necessarily as motivated and as optimistic as we could be. While, to be quite frank, on my side of the discussion now, because I'm using more integrative options, naturopathic options, I feel optimistic each time I see a new patient because I'm getting results that are favorable. And at the very least, my patients feel better. And don't get me wrong, this is not an ad for my work, but it's just, it's my passion. This is my calling. This is what I enjoy doing. This is how I serve. And so it concerns me that people are coming to me for a discussion and consistently lamenting how they felt when they had the previous discussion. And something needs to change with this. I've had people burst into tears just because they finally understood what the word biopsy meant. And this is not good, because if we're gonna get people to walk on a journey towards healing, they at least need to understand what's going on. So there must be a better way. And I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring here. This is what I'm committing to doing. Now that I recognize that the basic 45 minutes or an hour that I spend with a patient is so much more impactful, I am going to commit to finding ways to further increase the value of those sessions to the client, because I didn't realize how many things were missing from their understanding coming into the discussion. So I was doing what I needed to do to get them ready for the journey they would take with me. But there's so many things that were already deficient on their end in terms of what they understand about their diagnosis. So I'm gonna need to increase the amount of value that I put into each session in that regard, and not assume that they're coming to me because they're adequately informed already and they want to know what other options are there. So my service now becomes more about representing the diagnosis to them and trying to get them to understand their options and why the integrative option that I'm providing is probably going to be one of their better choices. Now, granted, there are cases in which I do think that doing chemotherapy or radiation actually is the better choice. And so I'm not one of those people who is totally against chemotherapy or radiation. I think it has its place because you need something that's going to effectively kill the cancer cells. And of course, surgery falls into that category as well. So here is my dilemma now. My dilemma is, now that my eyes have been opened to what's actually happening, I still need to recognize that I'm only one person. And because I'm only one person, I have to be practical about what I can do per day or per week or per month. Because I am not Superman yet. And seeing a patient with cancer does require a lot of emotional investment on my part as well as the patient's part. And so even though this problem, I think, I don't think it's as obvious to the wider world yet, but I think in the coming months it's going to become very obvious. I'm just one person. So I think the best move here is, and you guys can write in and let me know, I think the best move for me right now is to set a certain amount of time slots per week that I'm going to dedicate to offering this particular service, which is essentially more than just giving a second opinion. It's more than just talking about my recommended protocols. It's also setting a foundation for what their diagnosis already is and why one option or the other would be better. And so once I start doing that, it's possible that if this is something that is so in demand, it can get overwhelming. So I think for now what I'm gonna do is, I think I'm just gonna start by, I'm gonna start by just doing a certain amount of time slots per week and being very practical and pacing myself, and also being deliberate about adding that level of value to each session so that the person who I start working with, I mean, the truth is, this is what I was always doing, but now I'm gonna be deliberate to ensure that the person I'm starting this journey with actually understands the stage and the grade and even where their tumor is and what that organ normally does. Simple things, it's unbelievable. Oh my goodness. Anyway, it's my morning walk and I'm gonna give you some nature videos to close out today's talk. Happy New Year to everybody. Please remember this. Healthy Reasonings Live, I want to get it started on January 15th. Healthy Reasonings Live is going to be a live Ask Me Anything version of this podcast, meaning we're going to pick a social media platform. For the moment, it seems like it's going to be Instagram. And for 1 hour, we're going to do a recap of the previous day's podcast, but also we're going to take the opportunity to allow you to ask me any burning questions you may have had about that podcast, or about the guest and something they said, or even something that you just wanted to ask. And it feeds right back into what I was saying. We need to increase the level of education that our patients have. The cultural approach to cancer has to change. We need to ensure that people are adequately informed, not just about the danger of cancer, but about cancer prevention and about what to do if and when you are diagnosed. So Healthy Reasonings Live is going to commence on the 15th. I want you all to get ready for it in short order. Well, even before we get ready for that, I need you to go to my Instagram, which is wellness.jamaica. And if you aren't already following me, then you need to follow me, because the likelihood is that's where we're going to do Healthy Reasonings Live. And so it's going to be an Instagram live broadcast. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to have access to expert information and to ask questions in a forum where you can actually get answers. I'm going to do my best to answer all the questions. And so you need to go follow me, wellness.jamaica. I also, some other housekeeping, I want to ensure that I apologize because we had an episode on New Year's Eve that was uploaded to YouTube and created quite a buzz. But unfortunately, it was the upload to Spotify and other platforms was delayed. So I suggest that in the meantime, you run to YouTube and watch that episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. It featured my wife, Nisha, and our backyard garden. So that was pretty cool. And jump in and watch that while we get that tech issue started and ensure that it's available on Spotify and beyond. And by the time you're finished watching that, you should be watching this anyway. So have a great day and a great rest of the week, guys. Get ready for Healthy Reasonings Live. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you can be updated as soon as new episodes are ready. If you have a question, send us a voice note on WhatsApp or a WhatsApp message. The WhatsApp number is 1-876-405-7831. For more information or to become a sponsor, please email wellness.jamaica@gmail.com. See you soon.